Welcome back, everybody. Today's standalone podcast is going to be about powerful positivity, transforming your outlook in order to transform your life. I'm Nick Nortelli, and my co-host David Burden is joining me today. And today we're going to be focusing on a podcast that's going to help you refocus, lift yourself up. A lot's been going on since we last talked, David.
Yeah, I just joke that, in the last 2 weeks, I've gone from heart failure, not mine,
Not yours.
from heart failure to a significant change in the United States. It's been a lot to digest.
It's been a busy week, and here we are back to Monday, the start of a brand new week, the start of a major reset.
And happy Veterans Day to all the veterans, yeah.
Oh, and happy Veterans Day, yes. So we're collecting our thoughts. Hitting a reset button on what we thought we knew, and we are returning back to basics, which is things that we constantly tell on our podcast. Some of this is going to be a little remedial, but it's good to have us be reminded. And some of this is going to be some fast-forward advanced programming that's going to help you actually take steps that you're going to need to take to create a positive power momentum. We're in a time where the velocity of change is incredible. Things are going too fast. That's the short way of saying velocity of change. Things are moving really fast. It's just like when I hit one overwhelming bit of news, I get another, David. And so I'm going back to fundamentals, the magic 5 in the morning, 5 at night. But let's go about this in a structured way.
Well, when we talked about sort of doing a standalone podcast that's out of sync with the series that we have. I mean, just to be clear, we're doing that because most of the people who live in the United States are sort of struggling to make sense of the world we're now in, regardless of how you think about it. It's a change.
Gigantic change.
A lot of people don't like change, no matter what kind it is. And I know that with all the tools we have, the 24-hour cycle of news on television and, your cell phones and social media, and everybody's just talking. And as everybody's talking, admissions to psychiatric emergency rooms are increasing by the numbers. The number of people who were already on the brink, sort of mental health wise, the numbers of suicides have quadrupled in the last 7 to 10 days. So I think it's clear, we're struggling to try to figure out a path forward for ourselves. And so what I would recommend, and I'm a guy, I know I'm looking very shiny and very ebullient and all of that, but look, I'm a guy that's been through a thing or two in his life. And I think that the path forward sometimes comes from the inside out, not from the outside in. So what I mean by that is I'm not taking my cues from social media or the news. I'm taking my cues from people like you. And I've often said everybody should have a Nick in their life, but I'm the only one lucky enough to have that. But being able to have people around you that make sense, that can challenge you back when you're not making sense, their spirit and their intellect can help you create a plan for moving forward. There's a lot of fear going on right now, a lot of fear, anxiety, anger. And what was the other A?
Anxious, angry, and afraid. My 3
anxious, angry, and afraid.
Overwhelmed. That's the secret recipe for being overwhelmed, is be angry, anxious, and afraid.
There's a lot of that going on. And so when we were talking about, we felt like we wanted to do something. We wanted to have a calm, informative voice out in the ethers that if a person was inclined to say, it feels a little out of control right now. I don't really know where to turn for information. And I certainly am challenged trying to understand what's true and what isn't true. Everything that we're telling you, you can Google, AI, go to your library, whatever, and you can verify that what we're telling you is the truth. But what we're really suggesting is a series of actions and a series of thought patterns that we believe are helpful because they've been helpful for us. How about that?
Yes.
I mean, there's a reason why we're sitting here calmly having this discussion and not having it from the roof.
Well, it is raining a little out today, so
yeah. So one of the things that I want to maybe begin our discussion with, and anybody that's familiar with any sort of mental health modality or therapeutic modality will know the language that I'm going to use, which is there's a difference between acknowledging that you feel something versus acknowledging that you are that something. So for an example, you mentioned the AAA, right. When I say to you, Nick, is there a difference between you saying, I am so anxious versus I feel anxious? Do you hear a difference between those two things?
A powerful and important one.
Okay.
It's kind of like it's cold outside versus I'm cold. Right. There is a lot of things that are anxious in the world right now that if I gave into it and owned it, I would be anxious.
But I would now be that. That would be part potentially of my identity. That would be part of my thought process.
Some anxiousness in the air.
It would be part of my thought. It'll be part of my thought process. It would be part of my internal makeup, and it would then drive my actions. Right. Now, have you ever seen people who are afraid?
Absolutely. Well, and people who are angry is an even easier one to find.
How do they behave? What are their actions?
When people are afraid, they tend not to make the best decisions. They make survival decisions, or what they think reflectively are survival decisions, and they act more on instinct than planning, preparation, and thought. Like a car's driving around, and suddenly you go into a skid. In Minnesota, where I grew up, this happened a lot. And the impulse, the instinct is to slam on your brake because you're moving 70 miles an hour. Now your car's starting to slide. And that's the worst thing you can do. If you've been trained, if you have a plan, you know that you drive into the skid and then your cars will resume and you go forward. And 2 minutes later, you forgot you were going into a skid. The panicked fear would have slammed you in the guardrail.
Right.
So it's a difference between I am afraid versus I know what to do. This is a bad situation. These are the steps I take. I've got a plan.
I sort of just put all of that out there to sort of highlight, when we've all heard this phrase a million times, focus on your controllables. Focus on what you can control. Don't focus on things you can't control. But that requires having some sort of control over your thinking.
Yes, it does.
So to me, any plan to move forward for people who are experiencing fear, and listen, if you're somebody that it has concerns about healthcare, money, employment, housing, and many people have some of those, some unfortunately have all of those concerns.
Yeah, it describes, I think, most of us. If you don't have any problems with money, never have a day of stress, what planet are you living on? And do you have a spare bedroom?
If you have a spare bedroom, and guess what? It's not spare anymore. I'll be there in 10 minutes.
We can bring our own bunk beds, can't we, David?
So when I think about, for myself, controlling what I can, it starts with my mind. Because I'm very aware that my thoughts create the attitude that I have.
Yes.
The way I think about things has an impact on my feelings. It has an impact on what seeds get planted in my mind. If my thoughts that I'm taking in are, again, feeding that anger, feeding that anxiousness, feeding that fear, then the impact on my attitude is going to be obvious. My attitude is going to be one that will be palpable to others. I'm afraid, I'm nervous, I'm all of that, because now I've digested it. So the thoughts create attitude. Attitude creates behavior. So there's a link. So we're just talking about, control what you can. The first thing that you can control is what you're thinking about. Because the thoughts create attitude creates behavior, and behavior creates action. So when you're thinking about, gosh, where do I start? Gosh, there's all this stuff going on, and I'm watching on this network and that network, and on my social media, I used to just get images of little cats and cute dogs and the Saint Bernard twins that are so adorable.
Rainbows, puppies.
Yeah. Now all of that has been replaced by something that is so far beyond doom and gloom that it's hard to process. And we know scientifically, you know how many hours a day people spend on social media?
2?
2 hours. Oh yeah, right. And what universe is that? But
yeah,
so
not
here's
mine.
the thing. So controlling your thoughts, and controlling your thoughts, what actions do you think are important when doing that, I wonder? Because for me, the first thing I think about is I am no longer spending any time on the phone with Dismal Lizzies and people that want to continue they want to talk about what has already happened. I already know what happened.
Yeah, we were been there, done that. Life doesn't come with that remind button. I don't want to spend any more time back in that, happened. I want to live
controlling
forward.
my thoughts means maybe creating some new boundaries. Yes. Because you have to say, well, my thoughts just don't necessarily come to me on their own. They may, but some might come from other people, from phone calls, from television, from media, from just walking down the street, overhearing other people's conversations. We can't necessarily block ourselves out of all of that, I wouldn't suspect. But I think that the way I now interpret things is, do I really need to hear this? Because how is hearing this and getting this in my head going to help me?
Well, exactly. I mean, if you think about this in simple terms, why would we want to run back in the woods if that's where the fire is?
Exactly.
I don't need the re-trauma. What I need to do is find a safe path out of the woods, start thinking about where my water source is going to be, then naturally food, shelter. I mean, you go through some of these basic behaviors. So,
well, and I'll share a personal example, and that is Wednesday morning, while many people that I know were calling, can you believe, oh my God, and all of those types of things, I was like, I've got to call you back. I'm on the line with my attorney, or I've got to call you back. I'm on the line with the accountant, or I'm on the phone with my insurance broker, because during any kind of change, whether it's what we've just been through or whatever it is, you need to be able to take stock, assess your current position.
What's my baseline? Where am I? I can't possibly go to where I want to go unless I know where I am.
And where am I? And I also think about where I am vulnerable, right?
And where we are vulnerable, where are our risks? Have the tires been checked?
Like a risk assessment. Yeah.
Do I have enough gas in the tank?
So now these are things that are within my control, right? But if my thinking is, oh my God, this is going to be the end of me, and all of that, then I can't go down that freeway, and the freeway to becoming a little more empowered and being able to create a plan for myself that may very well help change my life, maybe for the better. Because look, how many changes have we been through that have been awful on the surface, turned out to be things that turned out to be kind of good for us? That's happened many times.
This is another thing that's very true. I think of all of the, even not to rehash COVID, but COVID drove geographic changes for us that have turned out to be very, very good, very smart, and very healthy, because we planned ahead and we saw this coming. I'm up in Olympia, Washington, in a low population area, and you went someplace that in Las Vegas where you have plenty of space, and there's heat, and there's not a lot of moisture, so that you wouldn't. I mean, you made conscious decisions about what is the best way to mitigate.
I sure did. I remember the day, in fact, when I realized what was happening. I looked at the map that the CDC created, Center for Disease Control.
Yeah, the heat zone maps. Yeah.
Yep. And I looked at all of it, and I was like, oh, this state has the fewest cases, fewest transmissions. I'm like, I'm going there. And I was there within 3 weeks. So, because as you can imagine, I joke about this. It's becoming less of a joke now and more of a mantra. but I intend on being here with the hookers and the cockroaches. So whatever strategy I need to make, whatever plan I need to make, whatever thoughts I need to correct, abandon, or embrace, I'm there.
And I'm willing to bet that some of the action steps that you took the morning of or yesterday and the ones you're going to take tomorrow are going to start off with the first 5 and the last 5. These are my moments, my mantra moments, my meditation moments, my aspiration moments, my goal moments. So we're sitting there and you're making that plan for the day. And I know that next thing you're going to do is make your bed.
And
it's silly, but we do, don't we?
Well,
those are
the first 5. So when some people hear this, they might be thinking, oh, they're laying there thinking about what they need to do that day, what tasks they need to do. I can write my tasks down when I sit at my desk.
Yeah, me too. That's when I do. That's day planning.
When I wake up in the morning, one of the first things I'm saying is, oh my God, I'm awake and I am not in pain. Because there are so many people that I know personally that are some over a decade younger than me,
who wake up into a body that is not painful. Okay.
And they have trouble getting out of bed.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh my God, that just sounds awful. You should do something about that. But I don't want to hear about it because it's bringing me down. No, I don't say that.
No, but I mean, there are wonderful people who are positive forces in our life that are in a social network who have more challenge than we do physically.
But really the first 5 though, the first 5. So for me, my first 5, grateful to wake up, grateful not to be in pain. And then I start thinking about all the things that, and it changes from day to day. I think about all the people that I've met and circumstances I've had that produced resilience in me, that produced a sense of, this is really ugly right now. But we're going to do what we can, and we're not going to worry about what we can't. And the first thing we have to do is get moving, get some water, get some oxygen, get some exercise, get ourselves showered and dressed. As a side note, get dressed, people. Put some clothes on, and flip-flops don't count. Get up and get dressed, because during COVID, the numbers of people seeking mental health support, they did a correlation between people that didn't shower, get dressed or anything. They would work on their computers, cameras off, and they would work, shut down their computer, and then go back to bed. The mental health community started calling that languishing. Languishing versus intentionality. Yeah, intentionality, right.
Yeah, because when I get up, I have a set of intentions that I know are going to happen. And that includes making my bed, becoming clean. And I'm signaling to my body consciously and subconsciously, it's Monday. You need to look appropriate. You're going to be on calls. This is work. Let's go into work mode.
I'm one of those
pajamas. I never get into work mode.
I'm one of those people that before I go to bed, I've already picked out an outfit for the day before.
Oh, me too.
for the next day, I should say.
It's one less thing to think about in the morning.
Well, it's not just that. I think it's also, it sends a message to me, like, we're getting ready.
This is what I'm going to be doing tomorrow.
I'm getting ready. Yeah. And so when we talk about one of the actions in sort of some developing powerful sense of power in your life and holding on to some positivity, and maybe really holding on right now is a good way of saying it. These are all steps. So controlling what you can, all the things that we've talked about, Nick, I can control. I can control who I talk to on the phone and who I don't.
That is a powerful thing that you can control. I
can control what TV shows I watch, which ones. There's a reason why I can watch the reruns of The Golden Girls and The Trekker until the cows come home.
They're positive. They end well. You have a predictability, and it conveys a sense of optimism.
And they treat one another respectfully.
That wants to tell me why my life is over as I know it. We're all going to be doomed. I want to watch Little House on the Prairie and remember what values that I want to embrace. And
it could be any show.
Do it yourself.
But it's a matter of trying to visualize the values that make me strong. And so when you say, well, under the category of control what you can, I just want to sort of say verbally to people so they can hear it out loud. There are a lot of things that are in our control still.
Yep.
There are a lot of things. I can take care of my health. I can eat well. I can get some rest. I can create powerful habits and power routines. Having the first 5, the last 5, important. Also making the bed, important. Getting dressed, important. Yeah. So there's lots of stuff. And I don't want people to have that get lost, because, it only takes a minute to get into, to feel that loss, to feel the vulnerability, and then move into fear and depression. It only takes a short period of time for all those things to happen. It can take a lifetime to pull yourself out of it. Maybe not a lifetime, but certainly
it can. I look at it as like you're kind of, when you're catastrophizing, you run the chance of being a little too close to the edge of the cliff, and before you know it, you're tumbling down, hoping you don't break your legs, running into trees and rocks, and the climb back up is going to be really hard.
The climb up is really super hard.
The climb up is a bitch. So we gotta not catastrophize, and and it's okay to recognize that there's a cliff there. There is danger there, but I'm not going to own that danger. I'm going to plan around it.
So I want to point out something else, if I could, around the idea of controlling what you can. So one of the words in the title of today's podcast was positivity, right? And, when people think of the word positive, what do you think most people think of when they hear that word, positive?
Well, I know what I think, David, and for me, it's about making sure that I stay hopeful and optimistic, and I do the opposite of catastrophizing, and I named it something. I think it's called fantasticizing. I just think, what is the best possible thing that could happen if I meet up with my friend at coffee today? And what is the best possible thing that could happen if I spend some time exercising? Or this is going to be good if I do this. So I'm trying to plant these messages in my head of, let's gravitate to positive and optimistic
and you get all that from looking at that word because of you're just wonderful.
Well,
there are a lot of
the FCC for false information.
There are a lot of people who, when they hear the word positive, that is not what they think. They hear the word positive and they look at it as though it is the antithesis of looking at reality. It's as though feeling positive and living in reality can't coexist. I personally believe, and many scientists that I researched to discuss this point, believe that both can exist, but it has to do with the choice that we make, right? So we're talking about, being powerful and empowered and resilient and moving through changes, whatever change that might be happening for you. And listen, the change of last week may only be one of many that you're making, but the positivity is really interesting because most people don't find it to be a choice. Most people would say, how can I be positive when it looks like the world is coming to an end? Well, whether the world is coming to an end or not, you still have choices to make in terms of your own thinking, your attitude, and your behavior. And so positivity isn't looking at the bright, looking at the world with what they call rose-colored glasses or something.
Pink cloud.
Yeah, or ignoring challenges. It is about, though, making the choice to sort of really embrace a mindset that acknowledges us to see the challenge and see the difficulty, but at the same time see hope, growth, constructive actions we can take, resilience, all of that. So, positivity is sort of resilience on steroids in a way, and in terms of what that can look like. And I know you demonstrate a great deal of this, but when we're talking about positivity, we're talking about people that are not denying reality, but are accepting it. But they're accepting it and saying, oh, yeah, well, this is pretty extraordinarily crappy. However, we need to be able to figure out, we need to sort of check our emotions a bit, but know how we feel about it. But at the same time, be thinking about, I can't create a plan over on one side if on the other side, I'm still very highly emotional. And I certainly understand Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and the stages of grief or change. All of that is real. But talking about positivity and the acceptance of reality, they're not at opposite ends. Also, you can control for yourself your own level of adaptability and flexibility. One of the things that people have a hard time with, and our great Aunt Miriam is certainly one.
Oh.
When you talk to her, it sounds like we're back in 1997.
Which is where she lives.
Which is where her growth ended.
Yeah, it's where her growth ended. This is the only reality she can now perceive. Everything else in the new reality kind of gets ignored.
So, part of what we can control is understanding that the profile of a successful person in the world that exists today in this moment is somebody who's flexible, adaptable, that is positive, that is realistic. Someone that says, I'm not sure what I need to know right now. Where can I go to find out the types of things I need to be knowledgeable on? How am I going to stay current? But that requires flexibility. And unfortunately, I know people that have essentially crossed their arms and said, I'm not learning anything else. I have two friends I'm thinking of. I won't call their names out, but they've got PhDs. And let me tell you, they feel like their learning is over.
Yeah, they know enough now. Like that.
Well, one of them told me, I have gone as far as anyone can go educationally. And you could hear the period.
Wow.
And at the end of the sentence. And I just said, that is really a shame, because there's not a whole lot that is going to prepare us for what's going on right now. And in order to really rise to the challenges that are facing a lot of us, we're going to really need to be flexible and say, gosh, I don't know anything about that. Nick, tell me more. Where can I go to learn this? Every day, like today, I learned 2 new AI applications. Every day I learn some new computer tool, some new AI tool, some new content creation tool. And funny about habits, the more I learn something new, the better I feel. The more I learn, the less fear I experience. The more I learn, the less unsettling changing things is to me, because I'm like, oh, well, gosh, I never thought I could learn this, so I might be okay, right? So it's just sort of interesting how many of these things, when you think about what you can control, part of it means that I can control things I wouldn't maybe ordinarily think about, like me being flexible.
Like flexibility.
Like me having the ability to, be mindful and take care of myself. So it's an interesting sort of a world we live in. One of the other things I want to bring up, Nick, and I know it's less, I know people sometimes think they can't control this, and Lord knows I have struggled with this, but you and I have talked privately about thought challenges.
Oh, thought challenges. Yes.
Like catastrophizing. And I know everybody thinks they know what that is. If I said, Nick, define catastrophizing, how would you define that?
I'm not sure that I can give you a textbook definition. I can tell you
what it feels like.
It means that see something bad is happening, and now I'm going to go research out and look at everything that affirms that this terrible thing is going to come and it's going to make everything terribler than it's ever been, and we're
Isn't that
all going to
something?
die. And then I find it and I say, see, I'm right, because this radical poster who is probably living someplace overseas, who is probably not even a good actor, told me that these terrible things are going to happen to me in Union, Washington, and I will never be able to afford dish soap again, and it'll just be tragic. And I'm like, and that affirms it. And then I go
we do love our Dawn dishwashing liquid, don't we?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think we were sharing a joke about Dawn dishwashing liquid earlier because we seem to have run out of shampoo at my house. And today my hair feels lighter. I think it's stripped out. So
well, it did wonders for the ducks covered in oil.
Whatever was on my hair isn't there anymore. And I feel 10 pounds lighter. I'm not recommending this. There's
no, not at all. Not at all. But I will say that there are certain things like catastrophizing, perfectionism.
Oh, that's a hard one for me.
Overthinking things, negative self-talk, a fear of failure, and everything you think, every action that you begin to ideate personally immediately devolves into a fearful mindset, and these are only, I've just rattled off maybe 7, constellations. Yeah. So first, pardon me, the control that I have over that, and I know this is going to be a stretch, I acknowledge that, but sometimes you have to say, why do I go from 0 to calamity so quickly?
Yeah, it's like one of those roller coasters that runs by air. You're sitting there wondering, when is this going to start? And then instantly you're going 90 miles an hour. It's like a switch. You had no time to prep. How does that happen, David? How do we go that quickly? Is that what trigger is?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. There's a part of our brain that is there to help us get into like the fight, flight, or freeze mode.
Right. That's where you get your adrenaline rush when you need to lift
cortisol, all of that. Yeah. And so what's interesting is that part of the brain is more, you need to run away or you need to fight. It's more like in line with that.
These chemicals that are telling you need to do something now.
It changes your heart rate, your blood pressure. It also changes the direction of the blood. So when people are amygdala driven, sometimes their stomachs will feel funny because when you're in fight or flight mode, your body doesn't need to digest food. Your body needs to run. So the blood goes
it for your muscles, and it sends the adrenaline to make sure your muscles have the energy they get. But
there's a whole physiological thing that changes in your body. And then the other part is that your frontal lobe, the front part of your brain where executive function and being able to critically think about things, have impulse control, those two parts of the brain, to my understanding, don't really work in unison. One works, the other works, but not necessarily together. What I've seen, both in myself and others, is that when I really become amygdala driven, because I have not controlled what I can, I haven't said, I saw this thing on TikTok and oh my God, the world's coming to an end. Instead of saying, David, it's TikTok. Really? They have become the authority by which you live your life? That part didn't happen. I'm like, oh my God, look at what's happening. The world's coming to an end. So what happens for me and lots of people, if we're going to use our great Aunt Miriam as a research animal, that thought goes in there. And then what do you do next? I am going to call up everybody else I know who I know feels the same way as me.
Yep. Amplify the catastrophizing and get reinforcement from your social network, which you knew they were going to amplify your value. Really feel bad. Well done.
Because it's the same. It's in the same kind of category of things. I feel like when something's bad, when something's negative, that gets more attention than when something is positive. Don't know why that is. I mean, and we've seen this in organizations, in work environments, personal relationships, team projects. When somebody's doing it, we very rarely say, oh my God, Nick, I don't know what my world would look like without you in it. You very rarely hear, unless you're talking to David. David will tell you. But you very rarely hear people say that. Instead, you say, you really upset me, or what you should have done is, it's very, very, but the takeaway is, how do you know when your thoughts aren't working for you? And maybe when your thoughts are working against you? Well, how do you feel? What actions are you taking? Is your bed made? Are you dressed? Have you showered today? Is your kitchen clean? What people are calling you on the phone? What opportunities are coming your way? Because your thoughts sort of sit at the core of a lot of those things, I believe. And so, but you have to have a certain level of mindfulness to be aware of that, which is something else that, I believe is controllable. I mean, you can practice mindfulness by being in the moment. Years ago, and I think I've been in AA for 40 years or better. And there was a guy that would say, when you have one foot in tomorrow, you're going to be very anxious. When you have one foot in yesterday, you're going to be depressed. And the space in the middle, because your legs are stretched open, well, I won't give you the full graphic analysis of what he said, but a foot in yesterday and a foot in tomorrow doesn't allow for much focus on this moment.
No.
Which is
all we truly have is this moment. There is no yesterday. We have a memory of yesterday, but you can't get there. It's gone. That doesn't exist. Yesterday is gone.
And memories...
Tomorrow hasn't happened. We don't know what
memories play a role in our present. And so if I'm one of those folks that says, oh gosh, I wish things would go back to the way they used to be, or things were so much better then, and I don't argue, because quite frankly, I had a great time in the 80s and 90s, right? So, I'm not
visiting certain areas of my past if it weren't, if it were possible, but it's not.
It isn't. And keeping those memories as an active part of my thought process, I find that to interfere with my ability to plan, look at objectively what's happening today. Because if the past is sitting right here, my fear would be that I would be looking at the present moment through that veil, and they might all be fruit, but it's not an apples to apples comparison, because the world today is not the world of yesterday. And, I have fond memories of the past. Who doesn't?
Well, of course, it's fun to take a look over your shoulder, but when I'm out on the sidewalk going to a destination, I don't get there very well if I walk backwards. I suggest people try it, because you're going to get it in that one moment.
It's like driving and looking in the rearview mirror all the time.
You can look over in case a dog is chasing you, but in order to get forward, you have to look forward. You have to be forward, and you have to be in the moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, the mindfulness and being grounded, is something, and focusing on the last five of the day is a great way to stay grounded. And you can control that. You can set the time for that. All you need is, a couple weeks, about 3 weeks, 21 days or so, essentially. You can't change all your behavior in 21 days. I don't care what the very popular vendors say, but you can get yourself accustomed to doing certain things the first 5 minutes of the day and the last 5 minutes of the day. And then one of the other things that we can control is the ability to set small achievable goals. Because let me tell you, I am not running at full capacity right now. I was in another state the week before last, dealing with a medical emergency of my last remaining sibling. That was physically exhausting, emotionally exhausting, cognitively exhausting. I think the whole week I may have slept 4 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm in another town doing all that. And then last week, well, we all know what happened. So
the
look,
world changed again.
Yeah, the world changed again. So
again,
I'm still, I feel like I'm a little ahead of the game to a small extent, but I am aware I am not my normal 150%. So today, as an example, because part of what we're doing, Nick, is we're not just giving information in a lecture workshop format, although we could. We're kind of sharing our own thing, our own stories here. And so today I woke up and I'm like, oh God, I feel better. I still look great. I joke with myself. I'm like,
you look great.
How can I feel so lackluster but look this great? I have these
and I am the opposite. I'm looking and saying, my gosh, last week was rough and it's showing all over my face and on my energy. And I really got to
when we were in the hospital the week before last, I was taking care of a relative, and I said to this relative, and I'm not insane, so I didn't believe it, but she thought I was serious. I said, I'm going to file a complaint with the chief nursing officer, because all those nurses at the nursing station, they're all staring at me because I'm beautiful, and I feel cheap, like I'm just a piece of meat. And my sister looked at me. I said, I just feel so used.
And she pressing me with their eyes.
Yeah, they were. Oh, it was was so violated. And so my sister said, David, they're not staring at you. They're looking at their computer screens.
Oh, because that's where they all were. Everything we think is not a fact, right? Darn it.
I know. But so within all of this, I would say too that, and even my sister, because it was pretty desperate in the hospital for a minute, and she and her friends, they were saying like, gosh, he can be so commanding and knowledgeable, but then out of nowhere will come this joke. So yes, get a sense of humor, get it on Amazon like we get everything else these days.
It's great for popping stress bubbles. I always think of this like that plastic wrap that used to hold your hand, go clink, clink, clink.
Exactly.
Those stress bubbles, maybe, I look at that jokes as a way of unpopping a stress bubble. Click, click, click. And it does, and people like that feeling.
And there are so many things that we can control, because if people don't remember anything else, your thoughts create your attitude. And we know what attitude is. The thoughts come in, creating an environment that tells you how I feel about the world I'm in, how I feel about the circumstances I'm experiencing, how I feel about the people that are around me. Thoughts do that. So if I'm taking my thoughts from a news broadcast, think of the impact that has on my attitude. Now, my attitudes affect my behavior. My behavior becomes what people see of me. Yep. Now, here's the really important thing, and I'm just going to say it flat and plain. Nobody wants to collaborate with an asshole. And collaboration, if you go on ChatGPT or wherever you do use your reasoning tools, and ask the system, what characteristics do I need to embody to be able to lay some productive and successful steps toward the future? Collaboration is going to be on the top 3 of that list.
Yep.
So think about your thoughts and your attitude and your behaviors just from that standpoint, because those 3 things will have an impact on your ability to be able to have the benefit of communicating with others. And collaborations produce money, projects, opportunities, things of that sort. And then also those things begin to influence your actions. So if you have thoughts that say, it doesn't matter what I do, the world's coming to an end, or I have a whole cycle of negative thinking, well, are your actions going to be those of, gosh, I need to get some exercise today, even if it's just 30 minutes or 15 minutes. Gosh, I need to have a couple of glasses of water today. Gee, I need to talk to a positive friend today. Those are not going to be the actions your thoughts are going to instruct you to take.
No.
So, I think, again,
it was a good list of intentional actions, David, whether you meant to or not. You just gave a good list of intentional actions that people can take to shake themselves out of.
Shake it out, man. Moment. Shake it out. And we don't need to
plan a call with a good friend, plan a walk, plan going down and getting yourself a treat, or plan on doing something good, or plan a time that you set aside to learn something today, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes. It's
I gotta tell you, Nick,
5 minutes smarter. You did something
when you take an action that results in you feeling like you have improved yourself and you've given yourself an additional marketable skill, I've just got to believe your depression, fear, anxiety, all of those things, they may not go completely away, but they're not leading you around your house by the nose.
Mm-hmm. And so you tend to seek out different people too. If I've learned something and I've got something good, hey, I made the best chocolate chip cookies in the world, I already can tell you, I want to share that with my friend Nikki, and I want to share that chocolate chip recipe because I know she's into baking, and all of a sudden now all these positive things are happening, and I got something happy to share. I prefer to share that than the world's coming to an end, and there's going to be no more Dawn dishwashing detergent for my hair.
And you know that I am a huge advocate of creating a plan. What's your plan, man? What's your plan? And in order to have a plan, you kind of need to know where you stand, where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. Doesn't end there, because from there you say, what goals would I like to have? And I got to tell you, I mean, a goal could simply be survival right now for many people. A lot of people are feeling like, I'm just trying to good. What does that mean?
Start there.
Does that mean your money, your health, a roof over your head, clothing, food? What does that mean? Make those some goals. And then what does the goal mean? What does it look like in terms of a task? And then what resources do I have? Because one thing I know, you can be the smartest guy in the room all day and all night. You are not going to be able to move your life forward in the world we're in right now. You're not going to be able to move forward alone. So what resources do you have? The worst thing in the world is to feel like you're in this world all alone. And so, you've got to if you feel that way, and I understand that because I have felt that way in the past, you really need to sort of explore that and get past it, because that can be a very self-limiting belief. This is not the time for self-limiting beliefs of any sort. So the plan is really important. And I think that just calling back some control, which might mean dialing back on influences that are wildly popular right now.
Dialing back on negative information, taking a digital break. No one's going to be able to, always say, ooh, we need a digital detox. And it sounds like this big deal. Well, the reality is, can I set my phone down long enough to sit and have lunch and talk to the person across the table from me? It's funny, but digital detox, if I can achieve 30 minutes without this thing going beep.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished. I really feel good about that.
I turn my ringer off, and now I do have certain phone numbers programmed in that if they phone, the call will come through. Yours is that way. My sister's is that way. Because if you're calling me at 11 o'clock at night, I probably need to take that call. Right.
Because you and I understand that there are boundaries, but you have people in your life, as do I, that have no boundaries. That you say, I'll call you back in an hour, and 45 minutes later, my phone's ringing again. Just happened, by the way.
Well, you're and listen to me say it this way. Your great Aunt Miriam calls me at 4:15 a.m.
Yeah, and that's why I changed my phone number.
Well, so here's the thing, I'm up. I like getting up early. I've noticed that when things are uncertain, when I'm not sure which way things are going, maybe I've got a plan that isn't quite there yet. And that, by the way, describes where I am right now. My plan, I'm kind of in the middle of, gosh, I'm reconciling all the things that have happened. I'm kind of got a vision of where I can go, and I'm in the middle making the plan to move forward. But I find myself getting up very early in the morning when I'm in this stage of creative planning and strategizing. I don't know, I guess getting up early because with the time change, it's dark when I wake up.
Oh yeah, ditto. Yeah, that's surreal, isn't it?
I actually feel like I've gotten ahead.
Me too. It's like I'm here and the day isn't here yet. This is cool. I will wait.
And none of the people in my condominium complex, all their draperies are drawn and the lights are out. And here I am up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm, having my 5 minutes. I'm grateful because what I think about. I'll share a personal thing. And I think that when I wake up that early in the morning, one of the initial, after I'm like, oh gosh, I'm not dead. Oh, I feel good. Okay. I think about those things. Then I start thinking about all of the people that have deposited something in me, that have made me resilient and strong and creative.
That have given you the gift of some wisdom or information or love.
I think about those people.
Just giving you love or a hug or something.
I think about them. I don't sit here and hold a seance and light a candle or get out the photo albums, but
that's coming in a future podcast, folks.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, we'll all hold hands and bring our box of Kleenex.
It's the only way I'm going to get repressed false memory syndrome stuff.
But the Native Americans, who I am part of the Cherokee Nation, believe in calling in the ancestors for strength and all that sort of thing. And so I broaden my definition of ancestors because if you're calling in people in order to give you strength, well,